Hello and welcome to Lansing Pulse. I'm Ken Miller, today joined by, as usual, City Administrator Tim Vandall. Tim, late last month, the City of Lansing saw a longtime council member resign. Dave Trinkle Jr. Served on the council for more than 20 years. I think he came on board in 2000, if I remember correctly. Talk a little bit about your relationship with him.
Yeah, really close with Councilman Trinkle. He was one of the councilmen who was here when I joined Lansing almost 8 years ago. And I feel like if there was ever a man who embodied the spirit of Lansing, Dave Trinkle would be it. You think about Dave, born and raised in Lansing, went to school in Lansing. He was a volunteer for the Delaware Township Fire Department for years and years. He was a county-wide storm spotter. He was a foster parent to dozens of children in the area. And then he served on our city council for over 20 years. So just a great man. I know he's really kind of been battling some health issues lately and going through a lot of stuff. So that's been really tough. I know our city council and I, we've been thinking and praying for him a lot. It's just been a challenging situation for him. The other thing that I would say too that was always interesting about Mr. Trinkle, and he was an incredibly smart man. Almost deceptively so. Sometimes I think he would kind of play it off as, whatever. But when you would talk to him one-on-one, he was incredibly intelligent, incredibly smart, just a ton of institutional knowledge. Dave is, he's a true Lansing man, and, I know we're all pulling for him, and, we hope he's doing well.
All right. In lieu of the resignation, the Lansing City Council chose a new member to fill out, I think it's almost 3 years remaining on that term. Yeah. Kevin Gardner was appointed in early March at one of the council meetings, and he is no stranger to serving Lansing.
Yeah. We're fortunate. We had two really good candidates for city council at our last city council meeting. So the council did appoint Kevin Gardner to that unexpired term. And Kevin served on city council starting in 2014 to 2017.
That's right. Yeah.
But even beyond his service on the city council, Kevin has really been active in the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, the Tree Board. You'd see him around a lot at like Spooky Center for Parks and Rec,
the events,
the fishing derby. Yeah, you'd see him around at all of these events. And I have one kind of cool Kevin Gardner story that one of our employees was telling us. We rely on volunteers so much in our Parks and Recreation Department to coach, youth sports.
Right.
And if we don't have enough volunteers, then you get, 20 kids on a soccer team, and that's not fun for the kids if, they're only out there for a little bit. And so we always put out these notices that says, hey, we're struggling to find youth coaches. Please sign up. And we were just struggling to find volunteers for, I think it was T-ball a few years ago. And Mr. Gardner, even though all of his kids were grown and moved on, he stepped up and he volunteered to coach a youth T-ball team, even though he doesn't have any kids in the area anymore and all of his kids are grown. And, we joke around because, he must have been a glutton for punishment if he's going to be around a bunch of kindergartners playing T-ball. But that kind of shows you the kind of person Mr. Gardner is. Even though no kids in the Parks and Rec program anymore, he stepped up so those kids would have a better experience playing T-ball in Lansing. And we're fortunate to have him. And like you had said, I think it's almost 3 years remaining on that term. But again, back to that first point, we had two really good candidates, but the council did appoint Mr. Gardner, and I think he's going to do a good job.
Right, and I can tell you from a staff perspective, having worked with Kevin, not only as a city council member, but just as a member of the community, nobody has been more gracious, so supportive of staff, and just an all-around good guy to work with. Yeah. So I echo what you said. All right, speaking of new people, we have a new staff member here in Lansing, a new Community and Economic Development Department Director. Talk a little bit about Joshua Gensler.
So he took over about a week ago, so he's still pretty new on the job, but we're thrilled to have him. He's lived in the Lansing-Leavenworth area for the last several years. He's got family here. He's married with a couple of kids. So he recently worked for the county in their planning and zoning department as a planner. But he has a master's from KU, I believe, in urban planning. and he won the American Planning Association New Horizons Award while he was at KU, I believe. So really good resume. And then when you talk to him, just a very easy person to talk to, very good-natured, good sense of humor. So much of what we've been doing the last week is introductions to some business owners in Lansing, staff, or elected officials, and just bringing him up to speed on a lot of the things that we have going on. And I know there's been a couple times when I'll be talking to him and I'll say, well, hey, I did this and this is why, and he'll kind of look at me and say, let me think about that, And so he's able to kind of maybe let me know if he thinks, hey Tim, maybe you could do this a little bit better. Maybe you could do this a little bit better. So I appreciate that, and he's. That position is on so many different boards and committees in the area. So just yesterday we were at an LCDC meeting. I believe next week he has like a Grow Leavenworth County meeting. The following week he has a Port Authority meeting. So he's going to be really busy. But we're thrilled to have him on the team. I think he's going to do a really good job.
Right. The planning part of it is very opportunistic for us because of what you have development-wise coming down the pike, whether it's commercial, particularly residential. I mean, that's kind of in his wheelhouse.
Exactly. And one of the things that we were talking about, one of the projects we were going over, is that potential apartment complex on the far west side of that town center lot, because they would
off of West Mary.
Off of West Mary Street, because that's one where they would need to kind of parcel off 4.5-ish acres and then also rezone it. So that's going to be one of those projects that he'll be taking the reins on starting in April. But again, we've thrown a lot at him in his first week, but he's doing really well, and we're thankful to have him on the team.
All right, good. As we get closer to spring and springtime temperatures, hopefully, many Lansing residents are looking forward to completion of the K7 Eisenhower Road intersection improvement project. And I can tell you from when we've had some additional work being done utility-wise, there are a lot of people that are focused on the end of that intersection project. So what's the latest you can tell us there? What's the schedule looking like?
So I think it's looking like that first week of April, I think they're going to try to get it kick-started again and hopefully get it wrapped up soon. And I tell you what, that first week of April, it can't come soon enough, because I know you've been hearing feedback, our public works staff has been hearing feedback, I've been hearing feedback. It's challenging though, because we can't lay that last layer of asphalt until the weather reaches a certain temperature. So that's where that's at. Another thing that we've been hearing feedback about is the pavement markings over in that area, and
southbound lane.
Yes, and here's the thing with that. So I know our staff, we got bids to redo that, but I want to say the bid was like well over $20,000.
Right.
And so we had this internal
for temporary
marking. Right. So we had this discussion internally in terms of, do we spend $20,000 on something that's going to be there for a month and a half, 2 months? And so that's why the markings are the way they are. We thought that would be a poor use of taxpayer dollars for $20,000 for something that's purely temporary, only a month and a half, 2 months. So that's why the pavement markings southbound look the way they do. And another thing that I'll say on that project, though, and I understand there have been delays and people who travel that area every single day back and forth. I understand they've been frustrated and maybe discouraged a little bit with it. One interesting story, though, we were talking to one of the businesses impacted by that intersection project, and this business, it's a regional business, they were telling us, hey, we actually appreciate all the communication Lansing and Leavenworth have done. We appreciate the way Lansing and Leavenworth have always made sure we had access to our property. So even though there have been delays, I know from that business's perspective, this is a business that they have hundreds of locations, and they probably have locations in areas where there have been road projects that haven't been as well done, that haven't communicated with businesses as well, that maybe haven't had as good of access. That business was basically telling us, hey, we've done this rodeo before, and you guys have done it better than other cities. So we appreciated that feedback. We've done as good of a job as we can. You know, we're kind of beholden to the weather a little bit.
Right.
But I tell you what, that first week of April, hopefully it'll start getting wrapped up. That can't come soon enough.
Okay, good. All right, last question. It's been almost 6 months since local voters approved a sales tax increase to fund that municipal aquatic center. So what is going on currently as far as planning for the city pool? And I bring this up, what kind of spurred the question in the first place is we got a neat little video, I think I see you in it, drone shot of the property and kind of giving people an idea of the location of where the pool is going to go. But what's going on now?
Yeah, so that video, so last week, me, our Parks and Recreation Director, Jason Crum, and Superintendent Cody Burnett, we went out there with our engineers and we hoofed it all over that site, that 19-acre site, to kind of get a better idea of where we would want the pool to be and how we would want it to be laid out and all of these different things. And so our engineers are currently working on plans based on, you know, if it's laid out on the east side of that property, on the west side of the property, you know, do you want the water slides facing north, south, all of these different things. So that's kind of what they're working on right now. The consensus from that meeting was, from a cost feasibility standpoint, the further west it is, the more cost feasible that project will be. If it's further east, we're going to have a lot of issues with grading and dirt work and stormwater runoff.
Okay.
So not that it's not doable, but it would be a lot more expensive the further east it is. One of the other things that was kind of humorous, but probably accurate, as we were right on that corner of Bittersweet and West Mary Street, but we were down in that gully, one of our engineers was saying, you know, if this is where it is, you know, think like the top of the water slide would almost be level with the road.
Right.
You know, you think about
it slopes.
Yeah, because it slopes down so much. So I mean, you'd be standing at the top of the water slide, and you'd look back, and you'd basically see a sidewalk right there. So it'd be kind of interesting in that sense. So we're going to let the city council make that decision, but our engineers are working on estimates based on where it is on the location. Another thing that we had heard from our elected officials when we spoke about this at a meeting maybe a few months ago was making sure it's a walkable site. We want people to be able to walk there, bike there, whatever. And one of the things that was interesting, and you don't realize it until you walk the site, there is a huge ravine on the further north side of that property. So
I think you can see that from Bittersweet, can't you?
A little bit, a little bit. And but I mean, it's so huge that you know, I don't even think you'd be able to do like a pedestrian bridge similar to Angel Falls. Like it's such a big ravine, it would make walking there very challenging unless you maybe find the right location and do a smaller pedestrian bridge, but then, you know, bridges are expensive and everything. So we're working on plans to make it as walkable as possible, but the grading in some areas does make it a little bit of a challenge.
Right.
The other thing that I just want to remind people about, because I feel like maybe sometimes people forget things, and also I think a lot of people got their valuation notices from Leavenworth County recently. So I mean, this pool is not being funded one iota from property taxes, not 1 cent. It's being funded purely from a sales tax that was approved by Lansing's voters in November of 2022. It was a tight vote, but it was important to our city council to say, hey, we don't want to raise these taxes. If residents want this pool, they can vote yes on this special sales tax. And I believe it passed like 50.3 to 49.7.
It was close.
It was very tight, but we threw it out to our citizens, and I think 3,000 or 4,000 people voted, and they made their decision. But I just want to affirm that fact that this is not being paid for one iota from property taxes, not 1 cent.
You brought up the accessibility issue as far as walking, riding bikes and whatnot, and we still occasionally get questions from people like, I thought this was going to be out at Bernard Park. Why isn't it out at Bernard Park? But I think you kind of touched on it for a different reason, but you touched on it. We wanted it to be a little bit more central, the location for the municipal aquatic facility, so that kids could walk there or bike there.
Yes.
right now the city hasn't grown out further west to Bernard Park to make that more feasible. So
Yeah, even beyond that, and piggybacking on that too. So at Bernard Park, we don't have a sewer line out there.
Yeah, that's the
so
other thing,
you
right.
think about that. Just getting a sewer line out to Bernard Park would probably be $1.5 million just by itself,
Yeah.
just to service a pool. The other thing, though, that we've been pretty fortunate on just the last 8 years. So Angel Falls Trail was built. I think it's a 10-foot wide multi-use trail. And then even beyond that, when we did DeSoto Road, we did a 10-foot trail on the east side of that road.
Right.
So you think about people who live in that holiday corridor. They'd be able to walk, ride their bikes, ride their scooters, push their strollers, whatever.
On cement.
On cement,
Right,
not
right.
even on the road.
Right.
So I mean that's one of the things that the city council was going for, was making it walkable. So if you want to ride your bike with your son to that pool, you can do that without ever setting, well, I think you'd have to cross one of the streets, but you can do that 99% without ever being on the roadway. So that was important to us, and we've been fortunate, like I said, to kind of expand our trail system a little bit the last decade or so.
All right, I've been speaking with City Administrator Tim Vandall for Lansing Pulse. I'm Ken Miller.